Hello and welcome to Padai on YouTube channel. This is for the class 7 chapter first of history, tracing changes through 1,000 years. So in this chapter we are going to study about 730 to 1720, right, the history. So you look at the map here, it shows that it was made in 1154 CE by a geographer Al-Idrasi. This section reproduces the detail of Indian subcontinent and from the larger map of the world that is there in map 2 was made in 1720s by another French cartographer. The two maps are quite different even though they are the same area, right? In Iladrisi map, South India is where we would expect to find North India, and Sri Lanka is the island at the top. The place names are marked in Arabic language, right? So it's upside down map created by him. This map after in 1720s, right? So there are some well-known names like a Kannauj in Uttar Pradesh in map 2 was made nearly 600 years after the first, during which the time information about the subcontinent had changed considerably. This map seems more familiar to us, and coastal areas in particular are surprisingly detailed. So this map was used by European sailors and merchants on their voyage. But you look, this area has all the most similar to what we have now. Equally important is the fact that the signs of the cartography differed in the two periods. When historians read documents, map and text from the past, they have to be sensitive to the different historical background, the context in which the information about the past was produced. So though the area were same, both the maps were differ. Right? So historians, when they are putting information together, they need to be very careful about it. New and old terminologies, right? So the word that are used in the past and in the present or in some time between we are talking about, there also are different. So if the context in which the information is produced changes with the time, so what about the language and their meanings too? So historical records exist in the variety of languages which have changed considerably over a year. Medieval Persians, for example, is different from the modern Persians. The difference is not just what with regard to a grammar and the vocabulary. The meaning of the word also change over time. Take the term Hindustan, for example. Today we understand it is India. The modern nation states, when the term was used in the 13th century by Miraj Aisiraj, a chronicler who brought in Persian, he meant the areas of Punjab, Haryana, and the land between the Ganga and Yamuna. So, Hindustan described the area of Punjab, Haryana, and land between Ganga and Yamuna. He used the term in political sense for the islands that were a part of a dominions of the Delhi Sultanate. The areas included in these terms shifted with the extent of the Sultanate, but the term never included South India within it. By contrast, in the early 16th century, Babur used Hindustan to describe the geography, the fauna, and the culture of the inhabitants of the subcontinent. As we will later in this chapter, this was the somewhat similar to the way the 14th century poet Amir Khusro used the word Hind. While the idea of geographical and cultural entity like India did exist, the term Hindustan did not carry the political and national meanings which we associate with it today. Right? So every person in the history used Hindustan for a particular part of India, not the whole India as now we are knowing. Historians have to be careful about the terms they use because they meant different thing in the past. Another example, term like a foreigner, it is used today means that someone who is not in India or not an Indian person. In the medieval period, a foreigner was any stranger who appeared, say, in a given village, someone who was not a part of the society or a culture. So, even if the person is from other village, they call them a Pardesi Ajnabi or a foreigner. A city dweller therefore might have regarded a forest dweller as a foreigner, but two peasants living in the same village were not foreigners to each other, even though they may have had different religion or a caste or background. Historians and their sources. Historians use different types of sources to learn about the past depending upon the period of their study and the nature of their investigation. Last year, for example, you read about the ruler of Gupta dynasty and Harshvardhana. In this book, we will read about the following 1000 years from roughly 700 to 1750 CE. You will notice some continuity in the source used by the historians for the study of this period. I hope you remember they do use the coins, inscriptions, architecture, and textual record for the information. But there is also considerable discontinuity. The number and the variety of textual records increased dramatically during this period. They slowly displaced other types of available information, though this period paper gradually became cheaper and more available. People used it to write holy texts, chronicles of rulers, letters and teaching of saints, petitions and judicial records, and for register of accounts and taxes. Manuscripts were collected by wealthy people, ruler, monasteries, and temples. They were placed in libraries and archives. These manuscripts and documents provided a lot of detailed information to historians, but they are also difficult to use. So basically, whatever the information they do have, they collect it from all these particular things. There were no printing press in those days, so scribe copied manuscripts by hand. So a person has to write it down, the copy of it by itself. If you have ever copied a friend's homework, you would know that this is not a simple exercise. Sometimes you cannot read the friend's handwriting and you are forced to guess what it was written. As a result, there are small but significant difference in your copy of your friend's homework. Manuscript copying is somewhat similar. As a scribe copied manuscript, they also introduce small changes. A word here, a sentence there. The small difference grew over a century of copying until manuscript of the same text becomes substantially different from one another. This is a serious problem because we rarely find the original manuscript of the author today. We are totally dependent upon the copies made by later scribes. As a result, historians have to read different manuscripts, versions of the same text to guess what the author had originally written. So you can imagine to just write about one particular period, historians look for the different sources and all piece put together to find out the correct meaning of the writer. On occasion, authors revised their chronicles at different times. The 14th century chronicler Ziauddin Barani, who wrote his chronicles first in 1356 and another version 2 years later, the two differ from each other, but historians did not know about the existence of the first version until 1971. It remained lost in the large library collections. New social and political groups. The study of 1000 years between the 700 and 1750 is a huge challenge to the historian, largely because of the scale and the variety of development that occurred over the period. At a different moment in this period, new technologies made their appearance, like a Persian wheel in irrigation, the spinning wheel in a weaving, and firearms in a combat. These are the three inventions very important, and that's there in the question as well. You must remember this. New food and beverages arrived in the subcontinent: potatoes, corn, chilies, tea, and coffee. Remember that all these innovations, new technologies, and crops came along with the people who brought other ideas with them as well. As a result, this was a period of economic, political, social, and cultural changes. You will learn about some of these changes in the chapter 5, 6, and 7. This was also a period of a great mobility or say movement. Group of people traveled long distance in a search of a opportunity, means work and livelihood. The subcontinent held immense wealth and the possibilities of people to carve a future. One group of people who became important in this period were the Rajputs, a name derived from Rajputra, the son of ruler. Between the 8th and 14th century, the term was applied more generally to a body of warriors who claimed Kshatriya caste status. The term included not just the ruler and the chieftains but also soldiers and commanders who served in the armies of a different monarch all over the subcontinent. A chivalric code of conduct, extreme valor, and a great sense of loyalty were the qualities attributed to Rajput by their poets and bards. Other group of people such as the Marathas, Sikh, Jat, Asham, and Kshatriya, and Kayasthas, a caste of scribes and secretaries, also used the opportunity of the age to become a political important. So group of people become more important over a period of time. Throughout this period, there was a gradual clearing of forest and the extension of agriculture and a change faster and more complete in some areas than in the others. Change in their habitats forced many forest dwellers to migrate. Others started tilling the land and become a peasant. These new peasant group gradually began to be influenced by regional markets, chieftains, priests, monasteries, and temples. They become a part of a large complex society and were required to pay taxes and offer goods and services to local lords. As a result, significant economic and social differences emerged among the peasants. Some possessed more productive land, others also kept cattle, and some combined artisanal work with agricultural activities during the lean season. As a society became more differentiated, people were grouped into jatis or subcastes and ranked on the basis of their backgrounds and their occupations. Rank were not fixed permanently and varied accordingly to the power, influence, and resource controlled by the member of jati. The status of the same jati could vary from area to area. Jatis frame their own rules and regulations to manage the conduct of their member, and these regulations were enforced by the assembly of elders, described in some areas as a Jati Panchayat, but the Jati were also required to follow the rules of their village. Several villages were governed by the chieftains together. They were only small unit of a state. So, in this what we have learned so far is that people made the group, right? New social and political group emerged, right? One as the warriors, Kshatriya, Rajputa. The other group of people, right, as peasant, right, start living at one place and providing a gift to the local lords and services and goods to the local lords, and they are further divided into subjatis and jatis, subcaste, right, and they make their own rules and regulations, their assemblies, and they have start managing their social environment.